Welcome to Uncontained, episode 171. I'm your host, Aaron Static Render, and on the show today, I speak to a podcaster, the host of Nowhere to Go But Up, and he interviews people who have had those rock bottom stories and have kind of helped build their way up from them. And in his life, in this interview, you'll find out he's experienced rock bottom 3 times and in and out of prison and struggling with addiction. He talks about that and how he got his life turned around by stacking small positive things. We'll talk about that along with just podcasting in general and what it's like starting up a show, what to expect, and Sean shares a surprise talent of his near the end of the show. So make sure you stick around to find out what that is. Also, if you have been liking the show, been digging what you're hearing, please hit that subscribe button in whichever podcast player you listen to, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Himalaya. All of those are good. So if you listen there, please subscribe, rate, and review. It definitely helps out the show. Now, plug in those earbuds because this is how Sean Dustin lives uncontained. How are you doing today, Sean?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on, man.
Yeah, of course, man. Of course. You said something like you did like 5 interviews already today. So thank you for taking the time out. So Nowhere to Go But Up. And what is the podcast about and where did you get the concept from?
All right. So Nowhere to Go But Up pretty much encompasses me. All right. Because I started from zero 3 times in my life, like literally zero.
Really?
Yeah. The last time that happened, I was, came out of prison in 2006 with nothing but the clothes on my back, moved back to California, Pinole with my mom, paroled out here in the federal system. And started over. Nothing. I had nothing. Lost my cars, lost everything, and had to start over. And that was the last time that it happened. But it wasn't the last time that I got in trouble, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. So you said you had to start over 3 times in your life. And
Correct.
so were any of the 3 times harder than either one, or was it just equally like sucky each time?
Yeah, it was, they were all situations that I put myself in those situations, and it was probably because of a lot of my own actions that forced, either a woman to take all my stuff, or like I said, I went to prison, so there was a reason there. And the woman that I was with at the time was, an active in her own addiction, and everything that I'd possibly have didn't even matter that I went to prison for her to keep her out of going to trouble. You know what I mean? But
Really?
yeah. Well, you're dealing with the meth and methamphetamine and that type of environment, especially in Las Vegas. It's nobody cares. It's dog eat dog.
Yeah, I'm from the Midwest, and there is definitely a lot of that going on in the Midwest as well. So, all right. So you started up. So you started up a podcast. What inspired you to start Nowhere to Go But Up?
So it was probably about a year and a half ago that I started thinking about it, and it was right around the time when I started realizing that I was overweight, and I really started getting into reading stuff online, Facebook stuff, podcasts themselves. I just got into Rogan, and I was amazed at the fact that we'd been being lied to for years about the food pyramid. And how sugar was, I got into keto and all this other stuff, and it was just amazing to me how we'd been being lied to. And that sort of like spawned me into listening to other conspiracy podcasts like the Tinfoil Hat, Freeman Fly, Who else? There's a couple of other ones that I was listening to, Grimerica, and it really sparked something in me. And in listening to Rogan, and he's always talking about, hey, if you're not doing something that you like, because there's a lot of people out there doing jobs that they're not happy in, and it's causing them to be, angry in their personal life. And that really kind of resonated with me. And for a year I was putting this thing together, putting it together, get a piece here, get a piece there, get my promo art together, get my whole deal. And I had everything, and all I needed to do was just press go. And then all of a sudden, all those voices got into my head, that tell you, you know what I mean, you're stupid, why, who wants to listen to you? So basically I was talking myself out of it. and
Yeah. The
and
imposter syndrome.
exactly. And finally I just had enough of my own excuses as to why, oh well, I need to get 5 episodes, and then have a little small bank, and then I can go and do this. And then 5 episodes turns into 9, and then 9 turns into 12, and before you know it, you just got a stack of shit with nowhere to go with it. And so, so in order for me to kind of hack myself, I just said, hey dude, you know what, just do it, launch it, and force yourself to have to be accountable to finish this thing that you got going. And from my life, I've been through a lot. I've been through a lot of different things. I've have a trans sibling, um, alcoholic father, grew up in an abusive home. A lot of things in my life that,
Wow.
yeah, that were bad. I mean, I from the time I was 15 till I was 30, I would say 33, because in 2004 is when I actually got locked up in Vegas, and then 2005 I got sentenced. 2006 I was let out. So I was almost in for probably about 3 years. I was in state prison in Nevada, and then I paroled out of there and went to federal prison in Sheridan, Oregon. And but from 15 till that point, I had been in and out of like 18 different institutions, from drug rehabs to jails to prison. You know what I mean? It was just an ongoing, um, just chaos, man, chaos. And I just never seemed to be able to, I would get a little traction, and then drugs, or I'd meet somebody, and then I would fall back down. And it was just a repetitive,
Ah,
how you just get into those loops, those patterns of destructive behavior.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah, so that's what ended up happening. And I've got a million stories. I mean, Jesus Christ, I was a drug dealer. I worked in almost all the strip clubs in Sacramento selling drugs. I was a part of, in the 90s, the late 90s and the early 2000s, here in our area down here. I was a part of all the rave culture that was happening, all the ecstasy, the club drugs, GHB, all that stuff I was selling. And so, most of the time for me to sell it, it was I was just getting it for free. I mean, I was the worst drug dealer you could probably ever come across, because I would just break even. I never made any money at it, and probably ended up owing a lot of people money in the end. But yeah, it was just all of these things that in my life, and all the struggles that I'd been through, and I managed to find a way through that. It took me a long time, but in the end, now I have I make 6 figures. I'm a union foreman. I work for my I'm in the business part of my union. I'm probably going to run for a business agent here pretty soon. So I mean, I'm pretty well respected
Okay.
where I'm at in life. And then I also, just I think the big change for me through that was, once I got tired of being tired. And I know that sounds cliche, and you hear that kind of shit in the rooms all the time, like of AA and NA. I didn't go that.
Yeah.
I used AA or NA, whichever one. It was AA for me. Even though alcohol really wasn't my drug of choice, but it was the closest thing in a 12-step program that was to me. So that's what I used. But I didn't like the setting. I didn't like the clickiness in there. I didn't like how it was like high school. And so I just kind of went
Oh
away.
yeah.
Yeah, I kind of went away from it. and stopped doing stuff on my own, and then got hooked back on opiates. And so I had a 7-year addiction to that lasted till about maybe a year and a half ago. And that was around the same time too, when I was doing this podcast. I was like, how are you going to be out there telling people about shit when you're still getting 120 Percocet a month from Kaiser and popping these things? And so I was just like, you gotta stop. So basically my mission is sort of been that I'm being the change that I want to see in the world, because everything's got to start with me. All right. I can't change anybody. I can't change anything until I change who I am. You know what I mean? And become a respectable person and somebody, I mean, that we all have a facade. I mean, it's almost like the Facebook syndrome. You know what I mean? Where, you're living you're
Yes.
living your best life for everybody else, but in the corners and in the dark recesses of your mind, you're a piece of shit. So I just
And when you look on Facebook or Instagram, when you are down and you're seeing like everybody with like posting all of their best moments, so you're seeing that and comparing it to your worst moments, that can have an effect on you as well. Like when you're like when you're broke and you see people with like Bentleys posted on Instagram, it's like, man, this isn't helping me right now.
yeah, right.
So, in a way, are you using the podcast to help better yourself, or did you start the podcast because you were already on the journey to better yourself?
Well, I was already on the journey to better myself. I'd already lost like the 35 pounds. I got back into shape. I was eating clean, doing all that stuff, listening to more podcasts, getting more, doing small little things that were giving me more self-esteem in this area, because I'd never done this before. I mean, I remember talking on the phone to girls when I was in high school, and they would always say, "Oh my God, you got such a great voice," and da 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 da, and this and that. Yeah, but I was like, well, whatever. I didn't really pay attention to it, and God, there's something about podcasting that to me is I can't explain it, man. I listen to these all my podcasts through little earbuds, right, while I'm working. So for 8 hours a day, I work by myself. So for 8 hours a day, I'm listening to content all day long. And for me, it's a more intimate experience listening to there, because I'm not listening passively. I mean, it's right there. I can't get away from it. It's in my head. And it's just been it's been a transformational type of thing, and it's inspired me to want to bring that to other people. And podcasting is becoming super popular. I mean, you're hearing it now everywhere. Everybody's got a podcast now. You listen to mainstream, they're even picking it up, and having podcasts to their news coverages and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just it was something that I started doing. And in the beginning, I'm not going to lie. I thought that it was like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a podcaster. I'm going to be like Rogan. You know what I mean? I'm going to get money and all this stuff. And oh my God, I'm going to be popular. And then I had to pull back from that for a second. And I was like, hey, what? All right, let's rewind. Why are you here? Why are you doing this? Is it because you want to feed your ego, or is it because you want to help somebody? And before I had to really think about that hard before I launched it, because I can tend to let my ego get in the way of almost everything. And I have to check that. Yeah. So I made sure that I was straight on that front. And, and then I started just, trying to focus on other people's story, not so much my own, because mine will come out, and I knew that at some point I would be on other people's podcasts, and my story will come out. I don't necessarily always need to be talking about myself, especially on my own show, where it's not about me. It's about the people that I'm trying to interview and getting their point across. So I had to kind of figure that out, and like I listened to all my stuff at least 3 times, so I replaced the podcast that I listened to with, like, whenever I finish my recording an episode, I'll throw it onto my OneDrive and I'll listen to it while I'm at work now. And I'll pick out like things like, oh man, I make this, you know what I mean? Little sounds that you make that
Oh
you,
yeah.
you
I
know what I
hate
mean?
mouth noises.
And so I'll pick out all these things. I'm like, oh, I need to change that. I need to change this. I need to change that. But what ends up really happening was that this whole thing was more therapeutic for me than I think it was for anybody else, because it's allowing me a way to get my stuff out there and to feel like I'm actually making a difference in the world. I mean, whether it's a big one or a small one, it's just my contribution, because I've taken a lot in my life and I haven't given a whole lot back. And I have a lot of knowledge
Yeah.
to give and a lot of, stuff and positive to things to put out there. And so that's just kind of what I'm doing now. I'm just focusing on putting out content that's going to help other people, and let the cards fall where they will.
Very cool, man. Very cool. So, now obviously we know a little bit about your background now that you've had to come up from nothing 3 times. So like what type of guest do you have on the show? Are they people who are dealing with rock bottom situations and coming back all the time, or do you have just a variety? What can people expect to hear when they listen to your show?
So it's an alternating deal. So let's say one week, this week was, I think I dropped that one with about monogamy, open relationships, and stuff like that with a friend of mine. That's kind of the lighter side of what I do.
Yes, I listened to that one today.
Yeah, that's the lighter side of what I do, and it's more goes into my interests and things that interest me, and then I'll bring in other people. Like I wanted to try her out to see how well we gelled together as a dynamic, and I've gotten somewhat of a good response so far. And then in the next one, like, so next week it'll be, a bottom, like somebody that's hitting a bottom, or actually this is a lady from Chicago who is doing work in the inner cities. And she has a group called, I think, Come Find Me. And so she's doing a lot of stuff in
Okay.
the inner cities in Chicago. And so it's just, and other people have bottoms, the comeback coach, that was a bottom, and talking about his story. And so I just figured that, if I was going to put that out every week, something serious, I mean, it might get a little bit depressing. So I figured
I could see that.
if I just sort of mixed it up with other things in between, like Melissa from the XY podcast, and she's a voiceover actress, and I got with her because I found her on Instagram, and voiceover was something that I was interested in doing. Like I told you before, I'd gone to Voice One as well in San Francisco for a short period
Yes.
of time. And so, I mean, it's almost like, since Rogan was one of my influences, I don't know, it's just stuff that interests me, like I'm supposed to go and learn how to kiteboard uh and starting in July. I mean, it's super expensive. I'm going to have to cancel, but I'm still going to interview the guy that's out there doing it, because it's something that interests me. At some point I'm going to do it. I think it looks super cool.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen it before, but yeah, it looks like it'd be really fun to do. Just for people who don't know what kiteboarding is, I've never actually done it, so you want to explain what that is? Or basically it's like sailing on a surfboard, right? Kind of with a
Well,
kite.
oh, it's more like a wakeboard type of, like a smaller board, or maybe it's a little bit bigger than that. I'm not sure. I know that the price point of entry into this hobby is super expensive. So it's 1,500 just for the lessons to learn how to do it, and then 2,000 for
Oh,
used equipment.
wow.
Yeah, just to be, and it's used because you need a couple of different kites, because the wind, you know what I mean? If you're, the wind over here near Sherman Island where they do all the lessons and stuff is different from the kind of wind that you're going to get on the coast if you want to go and try, doing that stuff on the coast. Um, and it's really cool, man. I mean, I've seen them do it in Maui. I've seen them do it out in Emeryville, and it seems like something that's really, really fun, and it's a good workout. And I love everything that has to do with the water. I have jet skis. I've had a boat. I live near the Delta, so I mean, I'm always out on, camping. I got a 40-foot fifth wheel that I take out, which is probably gonna be getting
Oh,
sold here.
nice.
Yeah, So I mean, I have an idea of what I want to do with that thing, and it has to do with podcasting and going across the country and doing fun stuff. But
Oh, that could be cool. Just thinking about the possibilities with that.
especially 2020 coming up, and we've got everybody's. I don't know how involved in politics you are in what's going on in our country and with all that mess. I don't really want to get a whole lot of it.
Yeah, I kind of try to keep like politics. If they come up, I talk about them, but I'm not a political expert, so I don't throw them out on my show a whole lot.
Yeah, just where we're at as a country and as a whole. We're in an area that is whatever it is. I have a bad taste in my mouth because last year, they changed all the tax codes this year. Last year, I got 2,000 back. I didn't do anything different this year, and I owed 10,000. So I mean, I'm
Really?
I'm not very happy with that guy.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you on that. So are you planning on hitting the campaign trail, going around interviewing people, or?
Well, kind of. I mean, because with social media, it always gets distorted what's really happening in the real world. And so we get a conflated sort of idea of the nonsense that's happening on Facebook and all the back and forth, bickering between the left and the right and the middle and this and that and everybody, and nobody really knows what's going on. So I was thinking about maybe I had an idea where because I have a front living room in my RV with 5 slide outs, and it's a perfect studio, literally a perfect podcast studio because it's insulated and it's such a small space that there's no echo, and it can just be
Okay.
a perfect setup for that. And I almost wanted to go and sort of do a background on all the candidates and kind of do like an FBI thing where they have the map, and they have, or not the map, but like they're going to RICO somebody, right? And they've got this person, and who they're tied to. I kind of
want the string lines between the two of them and everything like that. Like, I got you. I'm picking up what you're laying down.
So I want to kind of do something like that because and figure out, because like, what do these people vote on in Congress? Because a lot of that tells the whole story right there. Because if they're not voting for certain things in their voting, but then they're coming out and saying that they support this and support that, but they obviously don't because they're voting different, up on the hill, but nobody ever really knows anything about that. We're all unaware, and we're constantly being fed and directed, all the time, so I don't know. It's just something, maybe going across, go to some of those states where he has a stronghold in, and see if they're thinking the same thing that everybody else is thinking, or is it just a facade?
Yeah, definitely. And like, there's, I don't know, I think with Trump, a lot of like people who live in more diverse states see other effects that have come from Trump's presidency than people who live in less diverse states, because in less diverse states see like economic stuff that he's trying to do, I guess, trying to get them jobs and stuff, but not seeing the other side of the coin. You see like in Oakland and stuff like that.
Yeah, like the homeless problem. I mean, a lot of this stuff is all state level stuff that should be dealt with there. But I mean, there definitely is a lot of just a lot of chaos, man. It's just, the government was never meant to be as big as it is. It's gotten way too big. I was talking about this today. One of the interviews that I did today was with an investigative journalist that's retired, and he was working for an NBC affiliate post Watergate, and so he was explaining.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, and so he was explaining to me that what that station was saying publicly was 100% different than what they were saying behind closed doors. They were saying, "Oh yeah, we support free speech and all this other stuff," but somewhere from way above, it was being told, "No, you're not doing that." So there's,
Really?
yeah, man, and it's, the world's been like this for a long time, man. It's just, the president is nothing but a puppet. He's a front guy. and
Yeah.
the strings are being pulled somewhere else. And I think that we're in a second age of enlightenment, and I say this all the time, but they can't hide anything anymore because we have instant access to information. You can't bomb Syria without it going on online somewhere, or somebody posting something about it, or coming back from that war zone and telling everybody about it, or writing an article or something. It's just they can't hide like they did before.
Yeah, definitely. It's made the world a lot smaller, and the whole, instead of like a big city, it's almost like a small town now. Everybody knows everybody's business.
Yeah, I think it's great, man. I think instead of the new world order, it should be the citizens of the world unite against the tyranny of the governments. Trying to put us all together. I don't know. Maybe I listen to too many
Yeah.
conspiracy podcasts.
Which conspiracy podcast do you listen to?
Tinfoil Hat, Grimerica. I used to listen to Conspiracy Farm, but they changed to something else. I was with Pat Miletich and another guy. Freeman
Okay.
Fly. I was actually locked up with in federal prison with a guy named Fritz Springmeier, who was he was an author, and he wrote Bloodlines of the Illuminati and something about
Okay.
the Watchtower Society. And so I would walk the track with this guy for hours, just listening to his stories and stuff about how close he was getting to the truth and what happened to him. And they stuck his ass in there. They railroaded him right into prison to shut him up.
Really? Is
Yeah.
that kind of how you got into the whole conspiracy thing?
Well, those were the seeds. All right. He planted the seeds. And then I was still, when I got out, like in 2006, I didn't get clean off of meth until 2010. So there was 4 years where I was running amok. All right. So, I mean, I was in a marriage that I went AWOL from. I was still, I had more to do. You know what I mean? When I got arrested, I was,
Yeah.
selling drugs and doing check fraud, and dabbling in credit card stuff, not actually pressing out cards and doing all that other stuff that I learned how to do, around 2009, 2008, 2009. And he planted the seeds. And then once I got out of prison, and I actually started because thinking about it and thinking about everything, because it takes a little bit to decompress from being in a place like that, because it's an unnatural situation for anybody to be in, and it breeds violence and it breeds hatred. And I had to decompress from that because I came out with that attitude, where that's just how I felt. And I stayed drunk for about 6 months. And it was just a really difficult adjustment for me. But I mean, I made it through, and I always do. It just, sometimes I
And
have to hit my head against the same wall 3 or 4 times before I realize, oh shit, I got to go left or right. Can't go straight.
yeah, so how do you make that adjustment going from like, wherever you are all day is kind of told to you, like you're told when like you're gonna go lunch, rec time, sleep, stuff like that in prison, to having choices in society? Is it like, yes, freedom, or is it like in Shawshank Redemption when like at the end where Brooks was like kind of like institutionalized, I guess, and didn't know what to do when he was out?
So definitely, I think that's true for the folks that spend 5, 10, 15, 20 years, because you've got a whole chunk of time that's gone by. The people that went in before the cell phones came out, and they come out now, I mean, they have no idea. So much has gone by, and so much technology has come through, where they're just lost.
Oh.
I was lucky. It was only like 3 years for me. So, I was already, I think I had a cell phone before I went in, and the cell phones were a little bit different. They turned into computers at the beginning portion of when I got out, which was 2006. But I mean, I was lucky. I had, I had a support system. I had my family, my mom. She's always been there for me, no matter what, all the stupid shit I've ever done. So that really helped. I had a car, that I had access to, that I could use, versus, some of these guys, they come out, man, and it's just, they're doomed to fail because the system is set up for you to fail. It's better for them to have you violate and go back, because it's a prison, and at the end of the day, it's a business, right? Bottom line.
Yeah, they make money off your cheap labor, pretty much, right?
Yep. Yeah, and then they get, the private places, they get, like $30,000 a year for you to be in there, or some crazy ass number. I don't know. But the funny thing is that when I was doing my federal fighting my case, the in Las Vegas, Clark County Detention Center, I believe that the judges own the commissary there, so they starve you when you get there and force you, if you want to eat. You know what I mean? They give you the bare minimum amount of calories that you're allowed, that you should have, that one person should have for a day, which isn't shit. If you want to get anything else to eat, you got to buy the commissary, which is owned by the judges. I mean, does that seem like a what's that, a conflict of interest to you?
Yeah, definitely.
If they want to make more money,
yeah, we'll starve them, so when they get in, they'll have to buy the commissary and pat our pockets, because
yeah, we're
Sounds
gonna
like
fuck them on ramens.
sounds like a good business plan.
Everything is corrupt, and you start to see, the more that you were like, the more that I was in with people that were fighting their cases and stuff. I mean, you had, remember back in, so I don't know if you know about Freeway Rick Ross and the whole Iran Contra thing, where Oliver North and the CIA were bringing in all the cocaine, flooding the streets with crack to pay for the fight against communism and the Contras and stuff like that, Nicaragua. All right, so around that time when I got in there was when the back end of all that shit was going down, and so they were starting to RICO all these rolling 60 Crips from LA, and that were selling all these drugs and stuff like that. All these dudes got railroaded, man. That it's just they thought they could fight the case because there was no evidence, and you can't fight the government. And they all got they thought they could fight it. They were offered 10 years, and we're gonna take it to trial. You guys don't have any evidence, you don't have any drugs, there's nothing there. All you have is some piece of shit that sold some drugs to us maybe 5 years ago, and that word was enough to give them 20 years.
Wow, that's crazy, dude. So like, what was it, do you think, that made it so that you'd be able to stay out and not go back into the system?
This is a funny thing, right? So what kept me from going, like, when I got off of drugs in 2010, I stopped doing meth. I went and did a violation, came out like 90 days, and I was like, I'm done. I'm gonna go back to my union thing, because part of the problem was in 2008. I got in the union in 2007. I wasn't an apprentice yet, but 2008 hit the recession, and I got laid off, and I still didn't have a very solid foundation underneath me, and I went back to using again.
Okay,
and then that's when I went on that run. So after 2010, and I did my violation for all that. I decided to start playing softball, slow pitch, adult softball.
Okay.
And so it took me away from the group, the bad group, right? And it put me into a whole new group of people that I probably would never even associate with. And so it just made me accountable to have to show up somewhere and not let it, be a part of a team, not let people down. And through that, I started realizing that I didn't like the league that we were playing in, so I wanted to start my own softball league. And so I did. I went to the city that I lived in, and I figured out how to do all this stuff, and I started my own league. And so from that, I got a little bit more self-esteem, or a little bit more courage, and I'm like, all right, well, you know what? I think I want to start running tournaments, like softball tournaments, and I want to go join, the USSSA Association, and I started running my own tournaments. So I was a tournament director now. Then I started throwing tournaments and paying, sponsoring a co-ed team And so we would go with the proceeds that I would make from the tournaments, and I would take this team to Las Vegas and play in the Worlds, and I would take them other places and pay for tournaments other areas. And so all these little incremental things were giving me self-esteem, or not self-esteem, but confidence that I could do something, that I wasn't, you know what I mean, that I wasn't just a criminal, that I was smart, that I could
Okay.
accomplish goals. And then so slowly but surely it just one goal turned into another goal, turned into another one, turned into a bigger thing. And then all of a sudden the risk versus reward, and I say this a lot because this is how my mind works. So before, the risk was here, right? But the reward was up here. So I mean, I wasn't losing
Okay.
anything. I didn't have much to risk. So I mean, I didn't have shit. So I mean, if I went to jail, I'm not really losing shit. You know, I'm just living my life. Well, that started going like this. It started changing. So the risk was really high because I had a 6-figure income, or you know, I'm on my way to doing this or doing that. And that was the change, and that was the mindset change. It's like, okay, well, you know, I'm not gonna I have stuff that I can lose now, and I don't want to lose it. And so
Yeah.
that just became, you know, how I operated.
Okay. All right. Wow. That's awesome, man. So just building off little successes, and little successes tell you had something that was more valuable to you than the risk. Now that you are where you are now, for people who are going through what you went through when you came out, like what advice would you give to them for, making their own path?
Well, the one thing that I do know is that when you're not ready, it doesn't matter what anybody says. You have to be ready in your own mind and done with whatever it is that you're out there doing. Once you get to that point, then you need to find something that you can do that makes you feel good. All right, makes you feel good about yourself.
Okay.
So what I was doing was I would find ways to, let's say, I would do things that would make me feel bad about myself, which in turn would give me an excuse to go and get high. Well, I mean, fuck, I'm a piece of shit. Might as well go get high. You know, oh, I disappointed somebody else. Might as well go get high. You know, so I'd always have a built-in excuse as to keep me stuck in my situation. All right. So you just find something, it doesn't matter what it is, that it's going to allow you to keep making small progresses and incremental steps in getting more self-esteem, more confidence. Find a hobby, find something, you know, that you can do, you know, to keep you out of trouble. And ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Um, I mean, that's, you know, I don't know, that's pretty much kind of what I did.
I thought it was really a true statement that no matter what anybody tells you, unless you're ready, it won't it won't matter. But hearing somebody talk that's been through it and getting advice from them through the wisdom they gained can help a lot of people when they are ready. So I appreciate you kind of sharing your story right there. Now I'm going to switch modes a little bit more towards the entertainment aspect, and to help people who are looking to get into the entertainment industry right now, and whether it's podcasting or whatever avenue they want to head down. So my first question to you is, what advice do you have for somebody who is maybe looking to get into doing podcasting or voiceover, since you've been doing voiceover as well?
The main thing I believe is just figure it out, get in there and do it. A lot of the learning comes from making mistakes, because you're going to make a lot of mistakes in the beginning. So I think that, I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I listened, you know, especially when I got onto these boards, when I found these boards, the groups and stuff. Man, there's a whole lot of information in there, you know, about if you just go through the threads or use the search option and, try to figure out what it is you're looking for. I mean, there's tons of information on there. that's the one thing I can say. Whatever it is that you want to do in podcasting, figure it out. Get yourself your basic equipment that you're going to need. Like the stuff that I got, I went way overboard, and it's only because I have a good job. I can afford to waste money. Well, I can't really afford to waste money, but I mean, I this stuff sat around for quite a while before I actually put it into use. And then just start it. Whatever it is, just start, because you're going to have to. It's going to be a 5-year mission for you anyways. Once you start this thing, nothing's going to happen for you. You know what I mean? For at least 5 years, because it's a slow organic process, especially for me, because I started everything. Like I didn't have any social media other than what I started for this podcast. So like the Facebook, the Instagram, everything was start from zero, and just, I felt that was the way that I needed to do it. And like, I don't even tell anybody from my work that I have a podcast, because I don't want them to know, because I'm trying to be a business agent, and I definitely don't want them to know, you know what I mean, to try to use that against me. It comes out that I pot, or I used edible marijuana to kick that, opioid addiction. It's political at the end of the day. It's still a political thing, man. It's about people electing me into a position of responsibility, and a lot of these people don't understand that, dude. I would rather deal with 75 people that are high on pot than 20 guys that are drunk on alcohol. It's a no-brainer. Yeah, I mean, I've never seen a guy that was stoned that wanted to fight anybody.
No.
I've seen hundreds of guys that were drunk and wanted to fight everybody, including myself.
Exactly.
That's why I don't really drink anymore.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, yeah, dude. So, well,
brain fart.
Exactly. I was like, talking about smoking all this pot just made me feel high.
Yeah.
No.
Made me have a brain fart.
I know, man. Some THC broke loose or something. But all right, man. So that's awesome though. Ask a lot of questions. What I wanted to ask you real quick, while you were talking about the forums, but I didn't want to interrupt. What are some of the boards and forums that you go on to find out information?
I am on like seven or no, probably a lot more than that. Like podcast promotions, the podcast movement one. Promote your podcast here. I could probably pull them all up. I mean, there's a bunch of them on my Facebook. So let's see here. It is, so we got podcast guest connection, all guests for that podcast, share your podcast, promote your podcast, blatant podcast advertising. What else? Podcast movement. I have my own Facebook group that I haven't invited anybody to except for like one person. That's nowhere to go but up.
You got to start somewhere, man.
Well, it's all staging. You know what I mean? It's like, because I'm figuring these things out, and it's like, all right, well, here's a piece right here. I'm going to set it over here for a second, and then I'm going to come back to it. That's how I did this whole thing, man. It was kind of like pieced together, as I could get it. Here's podcasts, there's Potter and Family, there's podcast support, and then also I'm in, some addiction recovery groups, and some other ones, men's mental health, because a lot of people are interested in mental health stuff, and that. So I get some guests from there. I'll, find somebody who's got an interesting story, and I'll hit them up, like just cold calling them and say, hey, you feel like want to, share your story with, and help somebody. Sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no.
Yeah, you're gonna get a lot of no's, but you're also gonna get a lot of yeses, and also you're going to get a lot of times where you have to keep on the person. Like, you'll try to set something up, one thing fails and falls through, but then go back like 3 months later and be like, hey, dude, you still interested in doing the show? I know things got a little busy. Just persistence, man. You just gotta, that's one thing I found out. You gotta stick with it, like, to get that guest you want.
Yeah, and I haven't had any like really big names or anything like that. These are just kind of like local people, or people that I've picked up off of the off of those groups. but you've got a pretty big body of work yourself. You're like, what 170 in?
Yeah, I have 170 out now. I think this will probably be 171. So yeah, I've got a few out. Some names you may have heard of, and then a lot that may be new to you. So I like to get I like to try to get some of the big names, but I also want to get the people who are coming in at the ground level sharing their experience, because it's like those people who are at the level that you're at or one step above might have that advice that you need to get to where you want to go, opposed to somebody who has quote unquote made it for so long. I don't have a whole lot of time to sit and do the advertise like promotion like I want to because got so much going on right now. So
Trying to figure out that social media thing, man, has been kind of difficult for me because it's like you have to be engaged with it all the time, and it's like, dude, I don't have time to be engaged with this shit all the time. I can't post on Instagram every fucking 20 minutes. I'm gonna get fired.
yeah, no kidding. Sean, what about that construction job over there? I'm sorry, I was posting a cool pic to Instagram, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to promote my shit that you guys don't know about.
Yeah, yeah. So just let me have my time, But, uh, but yeah, it is tricky, man.
So 7 weeks, and I'm at almost 450. I've got 3 episodes that have almost 100. So I'm figuring I probably got about 90 people that are downloading on a regular. They just haven't got to the rest of them yet. At least that's what
Okay.
it looks like. I don't know. Maybe I'm just inflating it to make myself feel better. I don't know. But a lot of people just say, just stop worrying about that. Don't think about that because it doesn't make any sense. It's not going to do anything for you anyways. Just keep creating content, keep putting it out, be consistent, have a good message, and make sure that you're engaging with people. And like I just figured out how to do that. Did you see the clip that I put out?
The one you sent to me through Messenger?
Yeah, I didn't like that one, so I did another one because it just didn't seem like I don't know, man. They tell you if you're gonna do one of those, you choose a different. Don't choose a picture of your podcast or something that everybody sees all the time. So use something different. So I changed up the picture and I changed up the image a little bit and I tried it out a little bit differently. But yeah, those are what they tell you on Instagram. Like if you can do those for like 30 seconds to 60, and I think going around 30 is probably a little bit better because most of these people can't stay focused for longer than 30 seconds on something, or they'll swipe past it if it goes any longer than that. So that's something that I'm trying to do on Instagram and Facebook. Snapchat, fuck, I have no idea. I've never even got into Snapchat.
Yeah, Snapchat I haven't really messed around with too much, but yeah, Instagram and Facebook and a little bit of Twitter where, I spend most of my time. But I guess we're already on the topic of how do you promote yourself. So besides Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, is there anything that you use to promote yourself, or do you have a specific tactic on social media now?
Mm. I'm probably going to say that, aside from posting in those groups when I can, doing the Instagram stuff and on my Facebook page or in my Facebook profile, aside from that, the only other promotion that I do is being guests on other people's podcasts. Like I said, there's all kinds of different ways that you can go about doing it. And I think that probably when other people hear you, that's when they either decide they want to listen to you and go right to your wherever your podcast is and download it. And I think the best way for promoting yourself is being on other people's stuff because then you get a chance to hear you.
Yeah, and you get exposed to their audience as well, which is always nice. So, yeah, dude, social media still working on, which is understandable. I've been doing it for a little while and I'm still trying to get all the things down. How many shows would you say you've guested on?
Four so far.
4 so far?
Yeah.
All right, cool, man. So you're getting out there quite a bit. You're getting out there now. So in the short amount of time that you've actually had, like in your 7 episodes, probably 8 by now, what would be a highlight that you care to share with the uncontained audience?
Well, highlight's not going to be in the episodes itself. I get if I had to pick one that was a highlight, it would probably be the guy that I just did, the investigative journalist, because that falls kind of in the wheelhouse
Okay.
of my interests and like exposing truths, that people are trying to hide from us, social engineers, whatever you want to call them. And so, but another, I mean, if you just want to talk about a regular highlight, something that I did, some people won't know about me is that I actually row whale boats. And last week or last weekend,
Really?
Saturday, yeah. Last Saturday, I was in a race from the Golden Gate Bridge all the way to the Bay Bridge, and it was 8 of us rowing. There was a coxswain, and there's a bow hook. So the coxswain's a guy that steers it from behind, and with
Okay.
a big oar, and then the bow hook is the one who's basically telling us, hey, you need to do a power 10, or because the other team's coming up on you. And so it took us 43 minutes, and we went 5.4 miles, rowing hard the whole time.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah, this is something that I do in my spare time, and I started doing it for charity for my local, and we put a team together. And for Vallejo, they have a waterfront weekend down there, and they have a regatta and boat races, whale boat races. So that's when I first started doing it, and I've been doing that for 5 years now. And then this is the first year where I went outside of it and started doing it in other areas, or actually with another group. So that's been pretty cool, man. And that's what's really cool about that is it forced me to push myself beyond where I thought I could go. Because when you're rowing that hard for that
I bet.
long a period of time, like the whole time it's just like, oh, I want to quit. I want to quit. I don't want to go anymore. I want to do anymore. But you got a team counting on you, and they're just as exhausted as you are. And yeah, it was really cool, man. I that is the hardest I've ever had to do anything, and I left everything out on the water.
Cool, man. So, how does a whale boat differ from a dragon boat?
Well, it's definitely not the kind of it's not the scull rowing where it's the skinny boat where they go real fast. These things only go about 7
Yeah.
miles an hour, 8 miles an hour if you're riding current. So it's a big fat 2,000-pound boat, and there's 8 of us, two on per seat, and it's the wooden oar, and so you're basically you're using your hand like this, and you're pulling it back to you. It's kind of like the rowing machine, but there's a lot more drag on it, and you're constantly got pressure on the oar.
That is cool. You have any races coming up?
Not until we don't start practicing again for the Vallejo Regatta until August. So I got a little bit of a break. But I mean, with the union, I'm doing so many different things with them. That's another thing that just kind of, that helped me too in 2015. That's when I really got involved there. And, just, like I said, man, they're just these little small victories in that just allowed me to go, dude, you can do it. And it just, one thing leads to another, to another, to another. And, it's just all these little small things, if you're doing good stuff's going to happen to you.
Karma. I believe in it a lot. Do good stuff, you get good stuff. Do crappy stuff, you get crappy stuff back. I only have a couple more questions left for you, Sean. So let's roll on here. So when somebody listens to your show, I think there'll be a good answer with this one. When somebody listens to your show, nowhere to go but up. What do you want them to take away and remember about your show?
That they may hear something from one of my guests or myself that could be, what they needed to hear to keep going and not giving up. Whether it's, they're in a toxic relationship like I was in and got out. And this is probably going to go into one of your last question, but I just want to be, a positive force in this community, in the podcast community, and in community in general.
Okay.
And I want people to, you can use my stories and what I've been through, and how I got through it, to not have to go there yourself. And I do know that, some people, they just, like we said before, they have to be ready to change, and hopefully I find people that are on that part of their life and their trajectory, or they're able to receive this information and it be useful to them.
Yeah, the possibility that you have to help be an agent of change on your show is a lot, man. And I like what you're doing. I've listened to 3 episodes now, I think. So keep it up, keep on plugging away. And yes, as you've already mentioned, it is a grind. You'll have some shows that are high, some shows that are low, man. And I have one more question for you. But before we get to that question, where can people find you on the internet? What's your corner of the World Wide Web?
I'm on, let's see, I'm on Instagram. They can email me from Gmail. I'll give you all the stuff on the all my social media links for your show notes. Like I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. Right. I got a Facebook group. I have a podcast page through Libsyn where you can, go actually leave comments on every single one of my episodes, each different episode if you wanted to. I've got a YouTube channel. I've only got one viewer, but I mean, I have a YouTube channel.
It's there.
Yeah. Maybe somebody.
All right. Perfect. So you're gonna give me those. I will the ats for that and the links, and I will put those in the show notes so you can get a hold of Sean. And Sean, it was great having you on today. I really appreciate you sharing your story, and I look forward to hearing many more episodes of your podcast, Nowhere to Go But Up, and watching the show grow, man. And I appreciate you taking the time to come on my show and share it with the Uncontained audience. Now, the time for that final question, the title question of the show. Sean Dustin, how do you live uncontained?
Well, I just try to be true to myself, live 100, and I keep the noise down. I just there's the only boundaries that we have are the ones that we put on ourselves. All right. We can do anything that we want. Your biggest enemy is yourself, and your mind. You're the only person that gets in the way of anything that you want to do. And so I try to make sure that I don't get in the way of myself anymore. And that allows me to keep moving on, to keep growing, to keep learning, to keep, just putting one foot in front of the other, man. And that's what allows me to live my life uncontained.
Perfect, man. I have one final thing for you to do before I let you out of here for the evening and your marathon of 5 interviews for the day can be over. Sean, will you do me the honor of signing off the show today?
My name is Sean Dustin. I'm the host of Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and I live uncontained.
Welcome to Uncontained, episode 171. I'm your host, Aaron Static Render, and on the show today, I speak to a podcaster, the host of Nowhere to Go But Up, and he interviews people who have had those rock bottom stories and have kind of helped build their way up from them. And in his life, in this interview, you'll find out he's experienced rock bottom 3 times and in and out of prison and struggling with addiction. He talks about that and how he got his life turned around by stacking small positive things. We'll talk about that along with just podcasting in general and what it's like starting up a show, what to expect. And Sean shares a surprise talent of his near the end of the show. So make sure you stick around to find out what that is. Also, if you have been liking the show, been digging what you're hearing, please hit that subscribe button in whichever podcast player you listen to, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Himalaya. All of those are good. So if you listen there, please subscribe, rate, and review. It definitely helps out the show. Now, plug in those earbuds because this is how Sean Dustin lives uncontained.